Well, welcome to the Leading During Crisis series finale. Super excited to be with you today in conjunction with Sim Central Florida. We are bringing back a bunch of our guests, and we're giving you a chance and an opportunity for the folks at home to ask questions to the folks that we had on our series and the IT practitioners that you can get the answers that you guys want to get to. So I want to quickly introduce everyone that we have here that we're bringing in to have a conversation with them, share some best practices, and make sure that we are giving and adding value to our local IT community. So let's start off with the first one that I want to bring in. And we have David Robinson, who's the CEO of DSM. Welcome, Dave. And we also have Craig Philippe. Craig Philippe comes to us. He's the Executive Vice President of Information Assurance at Principia Raid. Welcome, Craig, to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
We also got William DeWitt. William DeWitt is the Director of IT Services for Brevard College. Welcome, and thank you, William, for coming back on.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone.
We also have Chris Collins. Chris, you're on mute, but Chris, welcome to the show. We have you here from, he's the Florida Department of Health in Orange County, the IT Director for an organization that's super important. So welcome, Chris, to the show.
Good to be back.
We also have Skip Kimple. Skip Kimple is the CIO for Four Rivers Restaurant. And if you've enjoyed, listen, he smells like Four Rivers right now. He was telling us before the show. So we're excited for Skip to be on. And, you know, I love food. So I think I know where I'm going for lunch after this. Welcome, Skip.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan.
And awesome. And also Adam Scheinberg, the VP of IT from Massey Services. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Good to be back.
And last but not least, we also have Jason Mobley. Jason Mobley joins us. He's the Educational Solutions Engineer for Zoom Video Communications. Welcome, Jason, to the show.
Thanks, Jonathan. Glad to be here today.
So, guys, listen, I'm super excited. Thank you so much for joining us again. Let me bring up everybody here so you can see. Here's all the folks that we have. And, you know, I also want to let everyone know, for those of you who are watching, for those of you who are want to ask questions to these IT practitioners and these gentlemen who are here, please make sure to post your comments, whether you're on LinkedIn with us right now or whether you're on our YouTube live stream. You can just post comments. As those comments come through and those questions come through, I'll be able to look at those, and then we're going to ask those questions to the guys here that you see on the panel. So make sure, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on YouTube, ask your questions. We're going to be asking that to these guys. It's your opportunity to make sure that you get to these gentlemen. These are, get their minds, ask what questions they want, pick their brain. So this is your opportunity to get that here on this show. So so what I want to do is I want to start off this way, guys. I want to talk about, you know, we mentioned a lot of the things when we talked about on our shows. One of the common themes that we noticed was a lot of folks talked about the impact of the business. Once COVID hit, we had to slash a lot of budget. How do we keep the employees engaged and supporting the business? So for that topic, what I want to do is I want to bring in Paul, David, William, and also Jason when we talk about that stuff and that particular topic. And I want to start off with Paul, because Paul, you mentioned something that was really interesting. I know that when we talked on our episode with you, you mentioned that one of the things that you were focusing on right now, when we talk about impacting the business and the budget was being slashed, that it could be demoralizing for the employees and for the workforce. So how did you keep the workforce motivated when that happened?
Thank you, Jonathan. Good question. Clearly, during the pandemic, a lot of things changed in the environment. It changed with our end user population. It changed with us as IT practitioners. And one of the elements that we managed to put in place to keep our associates, our IT associates, empowered and interested was to cultivate their technical curiosity. And what I mean by technical curiosity, understand what triggers and sparks somebody's interest in a certain technology, process, or procedure, and be able to encourage that the respective associate to continue on that path. Some of the examples that I can provide right now is getting folks interested in assessing gaps in our technology implementation for conference rooms, for example. And we got somebody extremely interested in taking that step forward and owning that conference room technology. It allows him, this associate, it allowed him to dig into technology, understand how the technology can be better installed and provisioned in those conference rooms, and obviously allowed also him to share with his colleagues some of his achievements.
Yep, that's awesome. And and what I think is amazing about that, it actually dovetails to something interesting that we spoke to on David Robinson's call. So I appreciate in his episode, I appreciate you saying that. And David, let me ask you this. Let me bring you into that conversation, because on our episode, we talked about the challenge that CEOs have balancing keeping the employees engaged while being remote. So what advice would you give the audience to help them adapt to all that change? And David, you're on mute.
Thank you. So, one of the things that as a country and an economy, we're very resilient, and I think you, as a CEO, you have to communicate that out to the troops. You have to stay in touch. No matter where you are in the org structure, you have to stay in touch with your employees, your peers, your subordinates, your superiors. Humans need bonds, and often, even though you may see someone in a Zoom call and there's 10 other people at a Zoom call, that's not what humans do at the water cooler. That's not what they do when they grab that cup of coffee and things like that. So there's no substitute for that check-in. So I suggest, and I've suggested to my team, and I see my team doing this, is whether or not they can get together socially after work, which is very limited for most people, they find ways to check in, whether it's a phone call, a Teams call, a Zoom call, or whatever, during the day, and check in with the person, even if it's for 5 minutes. We've made, with some of our remote employees, like up in Tallahassee and stuff, we've made trips up there just to make sure that those people are staying engaged, because they're extremely isolated. Customers are just starting to come back to face-to-face calls, and the people are in need of human interaction outside their family, outside that close-knit family unit, and that's, I think, why we've seen some super spreader events and stuff like that. So you have to find a way to stay connected with those people in a personal nature, not just in a business nature.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate that, David, for sharing that, because I think that's important from your level to just let everyone know how that works. And it falls in line with a lot of the things that we were talking about, and all of us, look, we all have children, right? We all have children going to school. I think one of the things that was a great value add to the series was having someone in the education space like William DeWitt. When we talk about particularly in the episode that we talked about, something that you said to me, William, that was that shocked me was, in the interview you talked about in late March, early May, almost like 95%. It was the number that you used of the employees that you had there started working from home when COVID hit. Pretty much the whole school, right? And so, how did you help the faculty train and streamline the process so they can do their jobs, teach students effectively? I think that's going to be key for, a lot of people feel the same pain because we're all parents, and so I'm curious to get your take on that.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, there were some really key factors. A lot of faculty never VPN'd into a network. A lot of faculty here at Brevard College never really were 100% online with Canvas for the learning management system. So there was a period of 2 weeks of mass confusion, because a lot of the rules and the regulations came down from the state government of, hey, by the way, institutions are closing. So then you went into a scramble mode. Okay, so how are we going to move everyone from on premises to off premises? Especially with Brevard College, it is experiential learning. So everything is hands-on and touch. So how are you going to take that environment and move it into a virtual environment? One of the first things that we implemented almost immediately was when we moved into the Canvas learning environment, we did online training sessions. So the faculty were able to know how to log in remotely. They were able to know how to remote in using their VPN connection. They were able to log into their Canvas. So we did a lot of online training in the beginning to get everyone up to speed, even though they didn't feel comfortable with it, because once again, a lot of them never really taught online or used VPN connections or even used Zoom. So a lot of the introductions of the new technologies were thrusted within the matter of the first month. So we had to go through a lot of online training to get all those individuals, faculty, staff, as well as students, in line to where the world was in a matter of 2 weeks. And a lot of it, if you guys remember back in higher education, a lot of the changes came over spring break. There was, in late March or early February, a lot of higher education institutions are on spring break. So students were at home and they were being told, oh, hey, by the way, don't come back to campus. Oh, by the way, here's some new technology that we're introducing in order you to complete your semester. So yeah, 95%, and only the essential people were allowed back on campus during that time, which is the other 5%. So the introduction of a lot of the technologies with training and the ability to reach out to them through email, through Zoom, through Google Meets, through Skype, through Teams, initially got everyone on board with the technologies. And then from there, we were still in emergency learning, not really e-learning per se. But then towards the end of the semester, people were feeling a little bit more comfortable. But then we moved into the summer months. So it was very dynamic, and the way the methods that we used was online teaching and the tools that we were given to help our instructors facilitate what they needed to get done.
And I appreciate you saying that, William. And it's funny, it was almost like you're directing the show, because you mentioned the word Zoom, right? And so obviously you can see the guy there in the lower right-hand corner when we talk about Zoom, because a lot of you guys are using that right now to communicate with your customers, your employees. And I want to kick it over to Jason, to piggyback off what William was talking about. Zoom has helped us all be more effective, working from home, obviously. Zoom is a verb now. It's like Google, right? Did you Zoom today? And I will ask you, I think based on our conversation, when you said back in June, we spoke, you feel that work from home, the landscape from work from home is going to be forever changed. And so, a lot of companies have embraced Zoom. And can you share some data with us that supports that view?
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. So let's talk a little statistics for a moment. So, and all of these are pulled from globalworkplaceanalytics.com, but 73% of people say they're successful from working at home, 68% globally, and also 78% of North American office workers state that they have the resources that they need to be successful at home. So they're most successful when they have the tools and the skills and the resources that they need to do the job well. So from that perspective, you start seeing a lot of companies moving from working in an office, now working from home due to the pandemic. Companies like Facebook and Google and Twitter, Amazon, MasterCard, even Zoom, right? The reason is that the pandemic provided CEOs and CIOs the ability to work from home and show them that people were actually effective. Leveraging synchronous tools like Zoom, employees are able to collaborate through persistent chat, present status, so that they can see if someone's in a meeting, if they're on the phone, if they're actually presenting or available. Then they actually level up with things like Zoom rooms to have a more immersive experience. So, and then lastly, a lot of people had cloud or on-premise PBX systems that were left in the office, and they're at home actually forwarding numbers to their cell phones, creating kind of a privacy issue. So leveraging a product like Zoom Phone allows people to be remote, use their same office number to be able to make and receive calls, and even be in a contact center.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jason. I appreciate you saying that and sharing that. And I would imagine that a lot of people on this stream and even the panelists all agree with that. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you all you guys for your participation in that topic, because obviously that's going to add a lot of value to the conversation. I want to pivot really quickly and talk about cybersecurity and talk about work, we just touched on a lot of work from home, and data security is going to be key. On our episode, we chatted with a couple gentlemen that touched on that. So I'm on this topic, on this particular part of the call, I want to bring up Craig and Chris to have a conversation about some data security. So Craig, let me ask you this question. One of the things that I thought was important, some of the keys of what you said, and I found interesting, we talked about how cybersecurity is on the rise. Obviously, I think I used the analogy. It was almost like the Patriots versus the Dolphins, right? I think that's what it was on our call. And it felt, well, maybe not the Patriots anymore. Patriots with Tom Brady, but let's just say the Chiefs versus the Dolphins. And it was almost like, we were always coming up from behind. And you mentioned the word you used was the human element, right? And the curiosity and the fear that these cybersecurity threats, that they prey on the human desire. So, you talked about a simulation that you had at your previous work, at Cobham, right after COVID hit. Can you share with us what that test that you did was and what the results of that was?
Yeah, sure could. And it's a great question, right? In the last week, you've probably seen an announcement from the U.S. government cybersecurity community about credible threats targeting ransomware targeting hospitals. Credible threats, the magic words there, right? So they know something's coming. They're actually certain of it from reporting. And the vector that ransomware uses to get in is typically phishing, right? It's easier for the bad guys to use, so they're going to use it. It's cheaper. And phishing is so crucial to any cybersecurity program, right? And your frontline people in that aspect are your end users, right? And your end users hopefully are nice people, and they don't want to call anybody. They don't want to say a piece of email is fraudulent, right? That's just against, the human nature, right? But you have to train them to get ready to, to expect to see it, and they have to be used to it. And what I did right when COVID was starting, I had a great team working on cybersecurity and phishing training. And we used a COVID-related simulator. And simulation is so important. You have to get your employees ready, and used to clicking that button or reporting it, whatever method you use to cull out the phishing. That it has to be second nature, and they can't feel bad about it. So we used a COVID example, and at the time there were a lot of false emails, a lot of phishing scams going around saying, hey, the infection rate is rising in your area. This was back in February, right? It was just starting. No one was used to it. And boy, did I get some I won't call it hate mail. Everyone was very civil. But I got more feedback on that simulation than any other simulation that we had used previously. And a lot of people said, dirty pool, I can't believe you do this. This is out of bounds. It's outrageous was one of the emails. But what it really did was that's exactly why you have to train them, right? You have to get people used to seeing those outrageous, and just things preying on human fear, human curiosity, those human elements. You just have to train on that. And it's something, it flies under the radar, but it has such a huge return on investment from a security perspective.
Absolutely. And, and that is exactly why I wanted also bringing Chris on the conversation, because exactly what I thought you would say, Craig, we talk about, Chris, on our episode, we talked about the education of the staff, right? And that's what Craig was kind of touching on. And regarding the topic of data security and breaches, what steps did you take to accomplish educating your staff? How does your team educate the staff for the Florida Department of Health, which is such a critical agency in our local area, and keep the public informed and secure?
Well, if you couldn't tell, I was nodding my head the entire time when Craig was talking. And Craig, I do feel your pain. We are in the same boat. Educating the users is your first line defense. A lot of breaches come internal. People click on the wrong thing. We do a lot of phishing simulations throughout the health department for a training aspect, as far as people learning what to look for, as far as not clicking on a piece of email that potentially could be ransomware or malware or have the ability to compromise us in any way, shape, or form. The enemy is very adamant of taking advantage of us in this situation because we are in a chaotic situation, especially in public health. We are the frontline people. While a lot of people may be reducing workforces, we are in full blast mode. We have hired probably another 25% of our normal capacity of employees. We have more people out in the field. We have more events going on. We have more contact tracing. So our organization is extremely busy in the event of this, trying to mitigate this virus and getting it under control to a manageable point to where we can get a vaccine out there. So in the meantime, the enemy is always looking at as far as ways we can compromise our information, especially from a medical health perspective. So a lot of the measures we use, constant training. We use constant training as far as the phishing attacks. We do a lot of emails can go as far as going out to the employees. We do a lot of personal interactions with departments and ensure that they're doing the right things. And that's constant. You can't stop it. You actually have to kind of beef it up a little bit in these environments because, again, the enemy is always going to take advantage of chaos and disorganization in the event of this pandemic. And this pandemic is going to be around, unfortunately, probably for a little while.
Yeah, that's what I think we're all would agree on. I see a couple heads shaking as you say that. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be. I think we're all in agreement with that. Well, I appreciate you guys sharing that because obviously that's a big topic. And let me just remind the audience, for those of you guys who are watching right now, I know we have a couple people on the stream. I can see. Feel free. We're going to be getting to the portion of the show where we're going to be taking your questions live. I see a couple questions that are already filtering in, so continue to bring those on. If you want to speak to these folks, this is your chance right now to pick their brain. Keep on posting those questions, whether you're on LinkedIn Live or the YouTube live stream. Make sure that you post those comments, and I'm going to look those up, and we're going to figure out we can get you some of those answers. What I want to do is one of the things that came up on the show when I'm starting to connect the dots of what all you guys are saying was the concept of trying it before you buy it, right? Because right now we talked in the very beginning about budgets and some slashing budgets and what we're looking to do now during these times. So I want to talk to Skip, Adam, and Jason on this particular topic because that was some of the things that you guys touched on. And I guess we'll start off with Skip. You mentioned something that was very interesting. We were talking about, now Adam is going to kick my butt when I say this word, but he doesn't like the word trends, right? But we did talk on our episode and we discussed a technology, sorry, Adam, trend. And you mentioned that AI was a big talking point for you guys. Kind of what you said, it's the next evolution and the next evolving solution in your industry. So can you talk about that and how the industry has shifted in your particular market?
Absolutely. Well, I think AI was really the talk of the town prior to COVID. For the past year and a half, it's been trending in regards to, how can AI really help with the guest experience? Because in my industry, that's really what it's all about. Everything is guest centric, and we try to find solutions for that. At the end of the day, from the business scenario, what we're looking to do is being able to leverage that experience and being able to raise your average ticket price, for instance, by suggesting items that you've ordered before or items that might in particular be related to what you already have in your shopping cart system, or if you're going through a line, what other items are closely related to that. So there's some interesting trends that continue during COVID and certainly is going to be post-COVID as well. One great example is White Castle with their drive-through technology. And we're starting to see this more and more. Sonic started to do this a few years ago, where as you pull up to the drive-through, it can recognize you. It can recognize exactly, it's taking into consideration time of day, weather conditions, weather patterns, all sorts of things to make these intelligent decisions to help the consumer make their purchase and also increase their basket size. So AI is a powerful technology within the restaurant and hospitality industry that is only going to continue to grow because there's huge advantages to it.
Yep, and I agree with you on that, Skip, 100%. There's huge advantages to that particular type of trend. However, one of the things we did talk about was the pressure on some of the IT teams to make a recommendation. So like if we were wanting to implement that type of solution, if it was going to benefit our organization, one of the other challenges is getting the buy-in, right, from everyone else. And so, Adam, let me ask you this question, because one of the things you said on our episode was technology is, and I want to read this because I want to make sure I get it right. Technology is the horizontal support beam where most departments make up the vertical framing. That's what you said, quote. And obviously, I agree with you on that, right? But do you feel that there's a certain pressure now in making your recommendations. Like if you wanted to implement an AI or SaaS or, you know, whatever you guys are looking for cloud, you know, or cybersecurity, whatever it is, do you feel there's a certain pressure now in making your recommendations because you know that every decision is supported and tied to a revenue generating aspect? What do you think?
I think absolutely there is a ton of pressure on us to make the right kind of recommendation here. First off, there are very few projects in any company that don't touch technology or depend on technology in some form or fashion. So there's a responsibility for us to be knowledgeable about what components we can bring to the table, whether or not we see return in some of those investments, because a lot of these are leading edge or in some cases bleeding edge technologies, and they typically have a higher price tag. But ultimately what we're trying to do is make sure that other departments are successful. So we certainly want to bring solutions that we believe are capable of delivering the results that we're anticipating. I do want to just mention that when it comes to something like AI, for example, these are business changing kinds of projects. And so there's something very different than about providing guidance as we select, say, a human resource information system than there is about the kind of thing that could change at its core the way your business operates, the way your business manages its relationship with customers, the way your business anticipates sales. Like Skip was saying, when we talk about how a customer may interact with a shopping cart or some potential purchase in the future, huge responsibilities on our shoulders.
And I think that's important because a lot of the audience that's watching right now, you know, this is in conjunction with Sim Central Florida. So a lot of IT practitioners that are part of that chapter and that group, a lot of folks that are connected with me on LinkedIn are also peers of you guys. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Before we move over to Jason real quick, I just want to remind the audience, because I can see, you know, the people on the stream, feel free to ask these guys questions. Now's the opportunity for you guys to pick their brains. These are the who's who of Central Florida. Some of the folks that we would love to get their insight on. In William's case, he used to be Central Florida, but he moved to the Carolinas, but that's okay. We love him anyway. But these are the folks that you want to get to. So ask your questions, post your comments in the LinkedIn chat or the YouTube live chat, and I'll be able to filter through that, and we'll be able to ask them in a couple of minutes coming up here. So Jason, let me bring you in really quickly because I want to ask you this question, because you were the one who said try before you buy when we were talking about when we had our episode, and you mentioned that businesses need to test their ideas, right? Proof of concept. And so how does Zoom, we mentioned Zoom is a platform that everyone's using for the most part, majority of everyone on this call. How does Zoom allow you to participate in the test environment? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. So let's take it back to January when I was still the executive director of IT at Florida A&M, right? So we wanted to do a test. We were using Zoom, but we wanted to move to the Zoom rooms like what I have behind me. So Zoom allows you to do a proof of concept. So you can actually test out the equipment. They'll actually send you a Zoom room kit where you can actually test out, have different type of meetings on it. Even on the phone side, if you actually want to test phones, they'll send you Polycom phones or Yealink phones, and you can test them out as well. From my perspective as an IT director, I would say that it's important before you put a large investment into any type of product that you want the ability to kick the tires to see how they work. Maybe you put it in a lab environment before you put it into full production. So I think this whole try it before you buy it or proof of concept approach is very valuable.
Thank you very much for that, Jason. And I think, I wanted to really end that segment with you there because you were the one who brought that up on our call. I thought that was interesting. Zoom is one of those things that everyone, like I said earlier, it's a verb now. But in the beginning, everyone was still kind of flirting with it and seeing if it was going to be working once COVID hit and how they were going to implement that in their organization. So it's not only Zoom, but it's all these other things that we've been talking about, whatever the topic is, data security and all that stuff. I think that adds a lot of insight to the folks that are in IT that are watching this to give them some ideas of what they could potentially do going forward. So I really appreciate you saying that. So I want to kind of end the roundtable segment in terms of just me speaking. And then we're going to start taking questions from the audience. Like I said, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I just want to let everyone know, because some people are hopping in late. You can ask your questions to these guys. Make sure that you post it in the chat, either on LinkedIn Live or YouTube Live. Post those comments up and we'll be able to see them and be able to ask them to you. But what I really want to talk about now is not only are, we talk about IT practitioners, but I know this is going to sound funny, but you guys are humans, right? You guys are people too. You are all going through COVID. We are all going through this together. And so one of the topics that also came up on our show that I thought was interesting was not only caring for the employee, but also caring for the person, right? Caring for the customers, the employees, and the person. So I want to bring in Paul, Skip, David, and Adam on this conversation as well. And Paul, we could start off with you, because one of the things you mentioned was to empathize more with the associate and understanding their needs so they can better service the paying customer, right? That's what is important. So being in the hospitality industry, can you elaborate on the mindset, taking that approach of the associate first?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan. We all know this concept of take care of your employees. They will take care of your customers, who will take care of your business. It's a classic motto. In hospitality, it's probably more important than anywhere else. And one of the examples that I continue to give my team and influence my team positively on this concept of taking care of our associates is it's an illustration of each one of us going to a resort on vacation. So think of yourself right now being on vacation and the water is leaking in your bathroom, right? You come out of your room and you find a landscaper that's on the property cutting the grass, right? Naturally, you will probably ask the landscaper, can you help me with my leak in the bathroom? And imagine if the landscaper will tell you, no, that's not my job. I cannot help you. You will have to go to the front office, report it, right? So this illustration brings back that concept of we're all in this together, irrespective of our jobs, responsibilities, or service ownership. It's almost mandatory, and it's powerful for us as IT associates to be able to provide that remediation of issues or helping our end user, our associates, when they need and as quick as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Paul, because, listen, your last name is to the rescue. That's how I'm saying it, right? You Wyndham Destinations. We need to go on vacations now. I can see you guys are stressed out. There's a lot of bald guys on this call. And so I can only imagine that's because of the stress, aggravation, and pressure. So we need to get Wyndham Destinations back up and running. So I appreciate you caring for the associates. And I'm sure, I joke, but obviously a lot of folks are watching this and they're in pain. And, I think it's interesting take that you guys take that approach where it's associates first. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And then let me ask you this question, Skip. I want to bring you into this because, when on our episode, we talked about the contactless dining experience because I'm a patron of the restaurant, right? And I love to go out and eat. The only thing I know how to make is reservations. That's for sure. And so when me and my wife go out, one of the biggest things I was scared of in the beginning of this was, hey, how does it work with, the waiter or the waitress is taking my credit card, and so I love the concept that you talk about, even on your podcast, about the contactless dining experience. So in your case, I want you to focus on the client, the customer, and some of the ideas of having that contactless dining experience that were born out of the necessity. So can you elaborate a little bit more on some of the contactless methods that you guys are using at your restaurants?
Sure. And I think, during COVID, that was really the opportunity. I mean, several of these technologies were already in play prior to that throughout the industry. COVID fast-tracked it. For years, the operators have been trying to figure out, how do we move the transaction from a POS to actually the pocket of the consumer in their smartphone? And there were, like I said, plenty of companies out there that were doing this, but COVID really allowed the opportunity from a company perspective to put it on the hot plate and let's make sure this happens. So being able to, your off-premise strategy from within the restaurant industry has become so critical over the years
that all the mechanisms around this, which kind of lays into the contactless experience, from ordering online, ordering via their device, being able to walk into a restaurant instead of touching a menu, scan a QR code, pull up the menu, being able to be curbside and having devices where you can take payments without touching a credit card. I mean, there's so many aspects to contactless dining and experience. It's not just the contactless payment piece, but it's the whole dining experience. And this is here to stay. This is here to stay for quite some time. As a matter of fact, I think we've permanently shifted the consumer behavior to expect this from now on. And regardless, when the vaccine's in place and we're all, everybody's not going to get COVID again, whatever that means, it's always going to be in the back of our mind. I think we're permanently scarred with the concept of touching something in some way, shape, or form. So the contactless technology that we've put in place and other businesses have put in place, that's not wasted technology and wasted money. That is here to stay.
Awesome, Skip. And I thank you for that. I'm going to go out after this and I'm getting me some of that brisket right after this event is done. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much. I'll be at the UCF location. And so let me ask you this.
Jonathan, lean or moist?
What was that, David?
Are you going for the lean or the moist side of the brisket?
I go for the lean, and Skip knows me now that I do not do hot sauce. So I'll just have the brisket and that's it. But David, it's I wanted to actually bring you in this conversation. So you hit the right note there because, piggybacking off what Skip said, on our episode, you mentioned, the best way to reach out to the customers once COVID hit, right? You mentioned that the goal was letting your customers know what your plan was to minimize the FUD, right? And using multiple channels to get your message out there to your clients and customers. So what ultimately was the best path for DSM to reach out to their clients?
So as with, any strategy in the 21st century, it has to be something that evolves and changes over time. We found, with our clients and employees, the same is that while we leaned on our old true methods of communication, phone, email, texting, and marketing channels, we found that evolved, over the last 9 months, and we kind of see it. We saw the initial Zoom type meetings or telemeetings evolving, and a lot of people would not have their cameras on at first. Later, people got more comfortable with whatever their environment was, and realizing that, hey, we're all Zooming from home, or and something it's always difficult to have that right background and things like that. So people got comfortable putting their backgrounds, their Star Wars background or whatever it may be. And as we saw the communication evolve, we've seen now kind of a return back to face-to-face meetings. So not every client's comfortable with that, but we see that need for human interaction, just like I talked about before, is very strong. We're social creatures, we're social animals. And so you have to really evolve with the customer, with your employees, and communicate in the way that they're most comfortable. Some people, absolutely you can't go into their facilities at all. Other, organizations, hey, I want to make sure I measure your temperature and you have a mask and stuff like that. And so you have to be adaptable, and you can't force your way in, because this isn't about changing someone's beliefs on how they react to this pandemic. It's about adapting to what those needs are for the customer. So we've seen it. Face it, we're human. We're social animals, whether we're introverts or extroverts. Find ways to connect with your customer, and that's what we did, is find the appropriate channel, use that channel, and then as that channel evolves, become more and more comfortable. It's interesting that a lot of customers would pick up the phone and we'd have a conversation. Now we'll actually just do a Teams call or a Zoom call one-to-one and have that video there, which is much more telling than just a simple phone call. So in some ways, things have actually improved, even though we've not been able to do as many face-to-face meetings as we'd like. The other thing we've done from a process perspective is not all of our clients had the ability to do, we do annual business reviews or whatever, and we've moved to a format where we're doing quarterly business reviews because it's so much more efficient. We don't have to do as much travel. They don't have to do as much travel. And so that's actually an increased step up in communication, doing those quarterly business reviews. I recommend that to organizations internally and externally, talking with their clients on a routine basis, and using some of the technology that we have here in the 21st century to make that seamless and easy.
Yeah, I appreciate that, David. Definitely hit a home run on what you said there, and it also ties into what Adam said on our episode, right? When we talk about process, let me pivot to you real quick, Adam, and then we're going to start taking questions from the audience, guys. So get ready for this. For those of you who are just joined in, post your comments on LinkedIn Live, on the YouTube live chat, and we'll be able to pick these guys' brains and ask them the questions that you want to know about. But Adam, really quickly, just piggybacking off what David said. When we talked about, David was talking about the process and I want to focus primarily on the internal process with you. One of the things that was interesting on what you said on our episode was, and I love the way you talked about Massey when we talked about the 5 functions of management. So I'm gonna just go run through them real quick, and I think this is important to say. So, A, you want to grow the business. That's number 1. You want to service your customers. You want to control your expenses. You want to collect your money, and you want to recruit, hire, and develop your team. Those are the 5 functions of management for Massey. So talking about what David said with the internal process and evaluating a project, can you share with me some of your internal processes and what that looks like? How do you rank it up against the 5 functions of Massey to determine if it impacts the business enough to move forward?
Certainly. We, like many technology departments, we don't interface with our direct customers, our business customers, all that frequently. So the customers of my team are usually internal. We're supporting the rest of our company, typically people in the field and in our service centers. I sometimes joke that we're the L in a P&L. And so for us to make decisions, we do tend as an industry to make them in a vacuum. We think about services that we want to invest in and technology that we want to invest in, and we know what the benefit is to our end users, but I'm not sure that we always stop to think about how it benefits a customer directly. So internally, we talk about our 5 functions of management, and you can see how these are especially applicable to centers where we're servicing customers directly. So they talk about grow, service, collect, control, and develop as the functions of managers there. When we try to justify expenses, we like to try to align those with our business. Are we investing in something that we believe will grow our business? Are we investing in something that will help us service our customers? And then you look at others, and it's like, if we're able to assist in controlling expenses or helping people collect money, well, that's giving them time back somewhere else. And that time can be used with in many other ways, but it has value. So we like to look at our technology investments and ask how we are going to make a difference to our customers, even if they don't know that directly. I'll give an example. When we invest in something like an advanced threat protection spam email gateway, I'm not sure that there's a direct impact for a customer who receives pest control service from us. But I can draw that line by saying, if I can rest easy knowing that the people who are dealing with their personal data don't have to worry as much as they did before, or I know that there are protections in place so that merely gaining control of a password doesn't put our customer data at risk, I feel like that's a stronger case to justify expense internally than if we were solely talking about, I don't know, if we were looking at other projects that didn't have a connection like that. So I don't want to get too far off, but yeah, we measure all of our investment, both time and cash, in terms of our 5 functions.
Awesome, guys. Well, look, that puts a nice bow on it, Adam. I appreciate it. Talking about caring for the customers, the employees, the clients, the partners, and all that stuff, how that ties into all your organizations. I appreciate you guys sharing that. And so now I want to pivot to the audience, guys, and we have a bunch of questions that came through. I want to ask you guys a couple here. So let me post up one here if you can see it from Nadeem. He says, as COVID has been affecting companies, a lot of IT hardware has been removed from production. What processes do you currently have in place for retired, decommissioned IT assets? How are you recovering its value? And I'm going to also add to that, how do you also keep it secure and wipe it away, right? So Craig, I'm going to bring you in on that too. And Chris, I see you shaking your head over there. It seems like you agreed with that question. So let's start off with you, Chris, and then I'm going to pivot to Craig on that one. So Chris, what do you think about that question there from Nadim?
It's definitely a challenge. I've never bought so much hardware in my entire life for people to work remotely. It is a challenge trying to keep track of everything, especially when you're talking about equipment that we had purchased to be deployed to other people and departments, and all of a sudden COVID hits. The department goes into a lockdown mode for a couple of months, and all of a sudden we're pulling equipment from everywhere to get them to work remotely. It is a challenge. The checking in, the checking out process, and it can be time consuming. Luckily, we have a pretty decent inventory system and process to keep track of the equipment that's being lent out, and any equipment that comes back in automatically is sanitized, refurbished, and put back out in production in accordance to where it's supposed to go. It is a huge challenge. We've bought more equipment. We have more equipment than we have people now. It's just the amount of resources that need to be devoted to COVID to try to mitigate its spread has been something that I haven't experienced in my entire career of working in IT to this point. Trying to track all this equipment has been absolutely crazy. But it is a challenge. I'm sure everybody's struggling with the same thing as far as how to keep track of this. And really what it comes down to is do your best getting the stuff out there as fast as you can, and keep your inventory up as best as you can. You're constantly going to be doing inventory. We're doing inventory right now, just trying to keep track of all this stuff so it doesn't go walking or get misplaced, or the fear of getting lost in the
Absolutely.
wrong hands.
And Craig, let me bring you in on that conversation as well. Because also when we talk about the equipment and decommissioning it, what about wiping it away, making sure that there's no information on there from a security perspective? Craig, it seems like are you on mute? Not sure I could hear you, Craig. Something happened to the audio there. Can you guys hear Craig? No, can't hear Craig. All right, Craig, I'll come back to you. It seems like we have some audio issues there, but as technology goes, maybe you got hacked. I hope not. You had your multifunction authentication going. So you have a two-step process, but for some reason we can't get your audio there, but we'll come back to you. Let me go to another question that we have from the audience here.
Hey, Jonathan,
yeah.
I would add something on there. So there's several data destruction companies, and it's amazing how they've evolved. They come out in trucks now, and they not only can they shred reams and reams of paper, but they also have hard drive shredders. So we deal with a lot of secure information, CJIS information, criminal justice information, HIPAA, healthcare protected information and stuff like that. We have some of our contracts require those drives to be shredded in that manner. They're amazing machines if you've ever seen one work. They actually bring them on site so that you don't have to worry about chain of custody. You put the stuff out there, the drives get shredded, and I know some people will just do a wipe of the drive and try and reuse it or donate it or something, but often after 3 to 5 years, a lot of that equipment gets thrown out. The other thing that we try and use is recyclers. So if the equipment doesn't have any donation value to any organizations, we will we'll go to the recyclers, because as you're probably aware, there's a lot of silver, gold, other precious materials inside that computer equipment. And so we're trying to be green, and we had a very unusual time to decommission our oldest data center. We have a data center that's about 20 years old, and we had built 20 years ago, our first one, and we decommissioned that as we expanded some other ones, and we did that right in March, right at the beginning of COVID. And of course, metals at that point hit an all-time low because people weren't building as much, but we still found a recycler to take all the information, all the stuff that we were recycling there. So I would suggest to the listener that they look at some of the recyclers out there, and if they send you a note, I can send the companies that we use and maybe pass that along to them.
Awesome stuff, David. I appreciate that you saying that. That definitely was very thorough. So Nadim, you got that question answered. Here's your opportunity, guys, to ask these questions. And here's another one from Keith. Keith says, technology aside for a minute, what improvements/changes have you seen in relation to IT's perspective within the organization's executive suite? So let me bring in Jason. I'm curious to know what you think, because we talk about a lot of different improvement and changes. We talked about that the other day when we were getting ready for this call. I'm curious to know, what do you think about that?
Well, from that perspective, I mean, technology aside, some other improvements I've seen is that some companies have, especially from the executive level, they understand the need for IT. But now I think the pandemic has highlighted that even more, because we live and breathe on IT, right? Our businesses function because of the technology that drives that business. So I think one of the perspective changes that we've seen is top level CEOs, VPs, and executives have seen how reliant they've been on IT and technology. And so I think moving forward, they have a higher seat at the table now because they understand it's so mission critical at this point.
Awesome stuff. That was a great response there. Let me kick it over real quick. We got a couple more minutes here. We got about 10 minutes till we're done, and there's a few more questions here, but I'm curious to get that perspective from someone else. And Skip, let me ask you, from the C-suite level, what do you think about Keith's question? Let me put it back up there again. Just what improvements, changes have you seen in relation to the perspective of IT within the organization's executive suite? What do you think?
Well, I think IT has always been a critical piece of the decision-making process, but even more so with new revenue channels. I would have to say within my industry, that's become one of the major driving factors for decisions in regards to what's going to bring in the biggest ROI to the company. And usually it's driven through IT and IT initiatives. So that was traditionally an operations piece that kind of drove those ideas and products to fruition, while ops and all the other departments do help push that forward. And just think about all the digital marketing around any business, but restaurants in particular, and loyalty programs and gift cards, and just all these little pieces really are IT driven, and you can equate dollars to them very easily. I would have to say years ago that was a little more difficult, but there's so many KPIs and tracking methods now to really help prove that ROI, that those IT initiatives are bringing in hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars.
Awesome stuff, Skip, and appreciate you sharing that. I think that was a very good question, Keith. Thank you for participating in that. I think that was a lot of insight for, a lot of people wanted to know that. So I appreciate both of you guys taking that one. We got a question actually specifically for David. So David Robinson, let me cue you up. Let me show you the question here from Jeffrey. I hope I said that right. Jeffrey Khalid. The question is for David. Do you think post-COVID consumer behavior will revert back to normal, or are these digital changes for serving the consumer and the way that they use will stay post-COVID era? Sorry about that. My glasses, I probably need a new one. But yeah, what do you think about that question, David, in referring to digital changes? David, you're on mute.
Okay. I think if this pandemic had happened 20 years ago, we didn't have some of the technology in place, the teleconferencing, Zooms and Teams of the world that really worked as well as they do today. Skype was kind of in its infancy. We didn't have the ability to have access to digital wallets and things like that. Technology and circumstances have come together here to change and create a new normal. And people that weren't comfortable with ordering things from Amazon during the pandemic, they had to become very comfortable doing that. And, I think of my 89-year-old father-in-law that, orders stuff from Amazon and gets things shipped to his house and stuff like that. That is forever changed the way we do business. I know retail outside of food and beverage and stuff is forever changed, where people are acquiring certain goods and things like that. I would not want to be in that business right now, because it's got to go through a lot of change. It's got to be about convenience. And people are finding that the combination of digital wallets, the combination of being able to do everything in your pocket, so to speak, I think one of the other speakers mentioned that as well, and doing it in a contactless way is going to change our economy and the way we do business. And it's actually going to drive efficiency. So I don't think it goes back to the way it was. I think it makes a hard shift to that more technology-enabled transaction. But I think also that, because people do seek, human nature is to seek social interaction and stuff, some of those things will come back and and feel like normal, but the digital transaction, the way we transact business and how much we order online and stuff, I think that's definitely shifted in favor of online retailers. We've seen that trend, obviously, but it is definitely going to be there. That's my expectation.
Awesome, David. Appreciate that. Great question there from Mr. Khalid. And then we have another question here, guys. I'm not sure who to kick it off to, but I'll just let you guys jump in. Let me post up the question here from Rodney. Rodney asked, how has printing/scanning infrastructure been affected? This comes off our YouTube live. Let me ask you guys that question. What do you guys think? Jump in there.
One thing that Brevard College has done, because of COVID, and we are 100%. We have all of our students, faculty, and staff back on campus starting in August. And there was a lot of measures we put in place, not only to protect our students, but our faculty and staff. So when it came to printing and scanning, the service that we used is basically no-touch printing, and it's a great way for students to. What we did is we implemented a barcode that would sit above the printer. And what they would do is a student, faculty, or staff member who didn't want to touch anything, even though there was cleaning items there for them to clean before and after they used it, they would just go up with their mobile phone, scan the barcode. They would sign in using their username and password, and all of their print jobs would come up, and they would basically say print. So that on the back end of the infrastructure, we had to implement touchless printing for all of our students, our faculty, and our staff. So that changed tremendously. And I know some departments and some of our new residential halls, they print all the time, but they do not touch the printers whatsoever. So we just need to make sure that our back-end Wi-Fi was strong enough to support that the application was stable, and that we used our SAML 2.0 SSO single sign-on to integrate that into anyone who logged in using their username and password. So there was a lot of changes on the back-end infrastructure, but on the front end, the students, faculty, and staff were able to print without touching any printer or scanner.
Paul, what do you think? I saw you raising your hand there.
I think it's a good topic. Thank you for raising that question. I'm going to go back to what I mentioned to you when we spoke initially. Our CEO has a saying, right? The bus is parked, and should we change the tire? And that's exactly what we did at Wyndham Destinations. Well, the bus was parked during this COVID. We really changed the tires and actually fine-tuned the engine. And one of the things that we looked was the printing. Right, it may sound a little ludicrous right now in those times when everybody's working remote. Why in the world are you focusing on printing? I have a full conviction that our associates will come back. We will, we'll emerge from this crisis stronger. We will go back to the offices, maybe in a limited format. We will go back, and printing will be here to stay. Right, until the organizations will get fully digitized. Printing will be here to stay. So anyway, during this pandemic, the tire that we change on printing, starting with an assessment of the existing infrastructure, the front end, like William said, the front end, the back end. We've done pilots. I think I heard Jason mentioning this approach of piloting and prototyping. Pretty successful with a few of our properties. And we're very excited to say that we are ready when everything goes back to the new norm in January, that we can relaunch a successful, what we call the managed print program.
Awesome stuff. And Craig, what do you think? I'll go to you as well. Craig, the microphone? I'm gonna ship you my microphone. We're gonna get that over to you. That is a shame. But why don't you do this? If you don't mind, I'll kick it over to Jason real quick, and maybe you can just type in our chat. I don't know what's the problem with that, but that's a shame, because I know that you have a great answer there. But why don't we do this? Why don't you type in the chat and I can read it over? Let me kick it over to Jason real quick.
Yeah, so from the scanning perspective, when we were at Florida A&M during the pandemic, we kind of had two problems. Number one is, how do we handle signature issues with people at home? And the other thing that we had to handle is, we have documents, but how do we get them back to work? How do we scan them? So one thing that we obviously invested in, and you see this very heavily in the real estate industry, is DocuSign. And we had DocuSign from the legal perspective, but it wasn't a campus-wide implementation. So we implemented that. Then the other thing that we implemented is, if you were at home and you had a document that you physically needed to return, Then we use products like Scannable, which is, and there's TurboScan. There's a lot of different ones out there, but basically an app for iOS or Android. You just drop the image down, it actually scans it, and then you can email it out. So those are just some creative solutions to solve these problems.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much for that, Jason. And Craig, what I'll do is, I think that was a very good question. It seemed to get a lot of responses, but if you can, maybe offline, will send me a message, and then I can send that to Rodney on your response. I really appreciate. I know that you had something definitely to add to that, but it seems like we're having some audio issues. So, but guys, listen, I just want to thank you guys very much. We came up at the 1 o'clock hour here. You guys have been awesome. We couldn't get to all the questions, unfortunately. I do want to, I definitely appreciate all the insight that you guys gave on the show. The way you added value to the IT community, to my personal network. I really appreciate you guys doing this. I think it was something that needed to be done once COVID hit. And so the fact that you guys all take time out of your busy day to get together and share best practices and share what you guys know, it's just, I'm indebted to you guys all, and I really appreciate it. So thank you all. We have one other comment from Larry, who's the president of Sim Central Florida, just saying exactly what I just said. Thank you to our speakers today. We appreciate you sharing your insights to our Sim Central Florida community. So I want to thank you guys all. Let's go one by one and just wrap it all up. Paul, thank you so much for all your service and everything you guys are doing at Wyndham. David Robinson, the CEO of DSM, thank you so very much. Craig Philippe from Principia Raid, thank you so much for everything you guys did. William DeWitt at Brevard College, helping us out with our kids. Thank you so much over there at Brevard College. Chris Collins, Florida Department of Health, need you so much. Appreciate you guys jumping on. Skip Kimple, CIO for Four Rivers. You are the best. You're a rock star. Keep it up. We'll be watching you on your podcast. Adam Scheinberg, the VP of IT Massey Services. You are the man. Thank you for your insight and really appreciate you letting us into the internal process there. And Jason Mobley, Zoom Video Communications. Zoom all day long. I really appreciate you as well. Thank you guys to everyone that was on the show. The Leading During Crisis finale is done. Appreciate you guys. Thank you to Sim Central Florida for putting this on for all of us. And we will see you guys on the very next podcast. And we really appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.